Now, a judicial interpretation concerning China's marriage law can make the problem of marrying the wrong person even bigger. To discuss this, my colleague Feng Xing joins me in the studio to help us understand the latest round of controversies caused by this legal issue. Thank you for joining us, Feng Xing. Now, tell us more about this law and how many people are affected.
Well, Chu Yuan, under clause known as Article 24, thousands of people across China have been forced to pay off the debts their ex-spouses secretly accumulated during their marriage. Let's take a look. Zhou Wei never expected to fall into debt over a loan she never took on. She fears now that life is about to slam her door shut for good. 2 years before Zhou's divorce in 2014, her then-husband borrowed 540,000 yuan, or about $77,000 from a neighbor to fund a company construction project. The man never told Zhou about the loan and put both of their names on an IOU. The money then went into a company account. When the man failed to pay off the loan, the creditors sued the couple. The court ruled that Zhou should also repay the debt because the loan was taken out during her marriage. The legal basis was a judicial interpretation of China's marriage law issued by the country's Supreme Court in 2003. Its Article 24 stated that debts incurred by one spouse should be paid off jointly. That's unless the other spouse could prove that the debtor and the creditor agreed that the loan was personal.
I have no way to prove this. I never took part in the loan, so how could I prove that the money was never used for my family life? The money was never in my hands, so how could I prove where it came from and went? What's worse, I have no way to prevent something like this from happening.
Wu Liufang never expected to receive 15 subpoenas just 1 month after her divorce. She was sued by 8 creditors and asked to pay off 21 million yuan, or $3 million. Her former husband admitted that he borrowed the money without Wu's knowledge while they were still married. All of the money was spent on gambling. However, the creditors claimed that they didn't know what the money was used for, and there was no evidence that gambling was involved. The court subsequently ruled that the loan was legal and Wu should also be held liable.
I was angry, shocked, and helpless. I went to petition at the higher people's court, but the officers there told me that as long as I can't prove that every penny of the 21 million yuan was spent by my husband on gambling, I would have to bear it as a joint debtor. The judges all followed Article 24. If the law doesn't change, the ruling would be the same. When I heard this, I just couldn't help burst into tears right away.
An intermediate court affirmed the original ruling, and the higher people's court rejected her request for a retrial. Wu's house was forcibly sold by the court, and her former husband has since disappeared. As a result, all of the creditors are now going after Wu and her family.
These creditors hired gangsters to stalk around my workplace, my kids' kindergarten, my home, and my parents' home. They put posters and banners spreading my parents' information. They even installed a location tracker under my car to stalk my family and me.
Wu has been working with her lawyer to request a counter-appeal from the prosecutor's office, but they have little hope for success. That's because the burden of proof specified by Article 24 makes overturning such cases virtually impossible.
In law, we should only prove things that happened, but not something that didn't happen. In this case, we are required to prove that the debt was not used for their married life. Article 24 is in fact a legal presumption, which exempts creditors' burden of proof in the first place. However, a presumption doesn't always tally with the facts, so the judge should base on the facts in the end.
Legal professionals say Article 24 was intended to protect creditors' interests by preventing couples from escaping legitimate debt by getting a divorce. However, good intentions can generate unintended harms.
If we are all aware of such a system where one spouse has nowhere to avoid the secret debt the other borrows, the trust and security in marriage will be gone. We talk about transaction security. Creditors are now secured, but what about marriage? If marriage becomes an unsecured system, it will deeply hurt any couple and society as a whole.
Wu Liufang has lost her home, and Zhou Wei is still anxiously waiting for her appeal in June. The women's troubles have left many wondering how many more cases like these must there be before the innocent can be protected. Well, you might think the cases of Zhou Wei and Wu Liufang are quite rare, but a recent survey shows that thousands of divorcees in China are burdened with their ex-spouse's secret debt because of the rulings based on Article 24. The financially ruined divorcees are demanding that the judicial interpretation be revised. Let's take a look. Members of a support group in Guangzhou meet regularly to provide each other with help. These women are all divorced, and their experiences are similar. Their ex-husbands took out loans behind their backs and mostly spent the proceeds on gambling. All of the involved courts ruled that women must repay their former husband's secret debts. Most of the women's cases have already been adjudicated and cannot be appealed. Still, the women continue to push for legislative changes.
We don't
know if the IOUs and subpoenas we're getting right now are the last ones. Only by changing the law can we protect our children and ourselves. Also, since we are already victims, we don't want our friends and family to encounter the same experience and get hurt by some malicious people who might want to take advantage of Article 24. That's our motivation to change the law.
A survey conducted by the Article 24 Victims Supporting Group showed that only 1.7% of the 700 respondents who already received their final rulings were able to overturn their cases. The unwitting spouse faces tremendous difficulties in meeting the burden of proof under this judicial explanation. Journalist Li Xiuping is one of those former spouses, and she worked with several other divorcees to conduct the survey in April. More than 1,100 respondents from 29 provinces provided their real names and court files for the cause.
We found that the 1,000 respondents came from all walks of life. More than half work for public institutions, and more than 80% receive higher education. They are actually the backbone of society. The creditors also show clear patterns. More than half of them are professional lenders. Half of the debts were larger than 1 million yuan, some were 500,000 yuan in smaller cities. They clearly exceeded what we call families' daily spending.
Li works for a state newspaper in Beijing. She's burdened with 5.8 million yuan of debt her ex-husband took on without her knowledge. The court has already frozen her salary for 6 months and put her apartment up for forced sale. China's Supreme Court issued 2 additions to Article 24 in late February. The court specified that debt isn't legally protected if it is fake or the proceeds were used for gambling, drug consumption, or other illegal activities.
We know that the fundamental problem of Article 24 is its definition of joint debt and burden of proof. The new additions haven't changed any of the rules, so they are useless. The Supreme Court is saying that Article 24 has no problems, but judges need to be more careful. This is in fact shifting responsibilities onto the shoulders of judges. I think this is also wrong. A law should always be based on justice. Any law or judicial interpretation should not make a citizen sink into fear or be burdened with huge debt.
Li and her fellow support group members have lobbied dozens of deputies in the National People's Congress, lawyers and women's organizations to revise Article 24. But their effort has met with little success so far. The women know they face a long road ahead, but they hope that maybe, just maybe, one day their voices will be heard. Well, some law professionals suggest that the quickest fix to revising Article 24 would be requiring signatures by both spouses in private lending situations. If there's only one signature and the creditor demands the other spouse to pay, he or she needs to prove that the debt was borrowed under the couple's consensus or the money was used for the couple's family life. However, a more fundamental change would be to specify what family affairs can be represented by one spouse only, and under what circumstances both spouses' consent is required. But that would probably be a much more time-consuming and complicated process.
And I understand most of the financially ruined divorcees are women. What happens to this group?
Well, Chuyan, that's right. Under a survey, according to the survey conducted by the Article 24 Victim Support Group, nearly 60% of the 1,100 respondents have already been or soon to be defined by court as dishonest persons subject to law enforcement. This means that they can no longer use a credit card, take a plane, or hold a management position in a company. More than half of the respondents' salaries had been or will be frozen by banks, and nearly half of the divorcees' houses or cars had been or are soon to be forcibly sold by court. Nearly 20% of them have lost or will lose their premarital properties, and about 5 of them were once jailed during law enforcement. And at the same time, more than 70% of them have to raise a child, and nearly 40% of their ex-spouses have run away, and 30% have disappeared altogether. At the same time, the Supreme People's Court is working with the All China Women's Federation to investigate the problems in different provinces. But before there's anything that can be changed, many law professionals and debt-burdened divorcees have been calling on local judges to be more cautious when ruling such cases. They're also asking law enforcement authorities to delay their actions when putting the unwitting spouse's properties up for sale. So that's for me, Qiu Yuan.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive report. Appreciate you joining us here, Feng Xi.